Tom, I'm going to explain to you what I'm doing on the fly because I have a question, and I also have your book. I love your book, Tom Aswell, Butch Aswell, if you will, writer of Louisiana Rocks, the true genesis of rock and roll, and also I have a book in my car that I'm supposed to send to my sister there, Tom, about the Louisiana sheriff's corruption history. But let's stay on the rock and roll. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right, so let me, the question I want to get out of the way, then we'll delve into a little bit more here as Louisiana Rocks, the true genesis of rock and roll. I've started up this internet radio station called Rix-Mix Community Radio, and there is no quote-unquote format because I know you got your start at KRUS back in the day. So I'm not having a format, but I got to create content, Tom, that people want to listen to and are interested in it. And Louisiana music has that allure. So I'm dedicating one song per hour to a Louisiana artist. I just played David Egan, Bruce Gay, and the question arose, does Louisiana have a music hall of fame?
It's a virtual hall of fame run by a friend of mine named Mike Shepard. It's called Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. And you can go on, you can Google that, and it should come up.
Okay.
But it's virtual. It's not a brick and mortar. It should be, but unfortunately, it's not. The funding is just not there. But Mike Shepard has done a tremendous job. In fact, he was a huge help in running the book. And he and I worked very closely together on that. And I'm deeply indebted to him. I'm trying to.
Tom, are you there? Did you swallow?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. So Mike Shepard, it's a virtual hall of fame, and it is, how do you get there? Louisiana Music Hall of Fame or
Google Louisiana Music Hall of Fame.
Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. Okay, so there's no...
Yeah, and it's a very well done webpage. It's very involved, very deep. It's got Johnny Adams, Steve Adams, Trace Atkins, Louis Armstrong. He's got them listed, a menu of the artists alphabetically on the left-hand column.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, and he's done a great job with this.
Is Mike? Tell us a little bit about Mike and where's his passion for Louisiana music? Where's that coming from?
Mike is an old music buff, just like I am. His father was a political reporter, like I am. In fact, I had the honor of working with his father, F.E. Shepard, when I worked for the Baton Rouge State Times back in the 70s. But Mike went a different route. He went the music route, and he's not a musician per se himself.
Mm-hmm.
He just loves music the same way I do. He has a passion for it, especially Louisiana music.
Oh, yeah. We're talking with Tom Aswell, author of the book Louisiana Rocks, the true genesis of rock and roll. So we got our answer that there is no brick and mortar. And Tom, in your book here, you contend that Louisiana should have a brick and mortar edifice, and maybe down in New Orleans or even somewhere else in the state because of the depth of the music that has come out of here. But you also contend in the beginning, the origin, if you will, of rock and roll is in Louisiana.
Absolutely. 1947, Roy Brown did Good Rockin' Tonight. And that song was covered by Elvis Presley, I think, in 1956 or 57?
Right.
And also, I'm drawing a blank on his name now, had the things I used to do, Guitar Slim. He had that in 1949, and Hank Williams did Love Sick Blues in 1949, which I say is the first rockabilly song. It's first country song to use amplified music instead of acoustic music, instrumental music. And Hank Williams, of course, was living in Bossier City at the time he recorded Love Sick Blues.
With Tom Aswell, our guest here, we're going to have to make an appointment in the future because, Tom, I'm learning, the proverbial you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm just saying whoever came up with that phrase needs to be, put out to pasture. Because soon as you submit to that, You ain't growing, and you just may as well go anyway. So I'm learning new tricks here, and I thank you for coming on the fly. I've also lit up some of the visual platforms, like our message right now is going to be recorded for YouTube and some Facebook. So if this works, I think we got a segment here for the future for you, Tom Aswell, Butch Aswell. For the sake of those that are going to listen to this a little bit later on. Give us your background here, because there are those in Lincoln Parish. Oh, is that Butch? I know Butch, and Butch has a couple of stories. We don't need to go into those stories, but tell us, unless you want to, because this isn't the FCC. We're not over the air. This is a podcast.
No, I'm not going to go there. But you're talking about not having a format for your program. And then you mentioned that I used to be on KRUS,
right?
And back in the day, KRUS didn't have much of a format either. It was pretty loosey goosey, and there was I kind of struck out on my own on a show called Requestfully Yours that had originally been hosted by a guy named Bill Young,
okay,
who was a very good disc jockey, and he moved on. I don't know where he went. I know he went first to KJOE in Shreveport, and I think he found his way down to Houston. But a lot of people don't realize that Merle Kilgore used to be a disc jockey on KRUS when he was a student at Louisiana Tech. And Merle Kilgore, of course, wrote Ring of Fire for Johnny Cash, and wrote Wolverton Mountain. So he was a prolific writer. He was Johnny Hank Williams Jr.'s manager as well,
right,
for a while. So Ruston has a pretty good history of music in its own right.
Sure
Van Gibbons, who was a disc jockey there under the name of Tommy Blake, wrote some great songs. Am I That Easy to Forget that Jim Reed sang? Mm-hmm. He wrote. I just downloaded this song just the other day. A song that Andy Williams recorded, and I can't remember the name of it right now. But he would give his songs away for booze and pills, rather than collecting the royalties. And it's very unfortunate. He wasn't very protective of his music writing ability. Sure. But he was a disc jockey at KRUS as well, and the one who inspired me to become a disc jockey later. I used to go to the control room up there when I was in junior high and sit behind him and watch him work. And He would send me down to the Olympic Cafe for cigarettes and coffee. And, and at that time, a kid could buy cigarettes, no problem, mm-hmm. But I didn't smoke or anything, but I would go buy the cigarettes for him. And he took me to the Louisiana Hayride with him the night that Elvis performed his last gig there at Hearst Coliseum, and I got to hide backstage and got to meet Elvis. So that was a pretty good trip itself.
And how old were you at that time? Probably what, 16?
More like 12.
12.
Yeah, I was just a young pup. I was a student at Ruston Junior High, so I was 12 to 13, 14 years old.
Now, there's somebody, and I just, Tom Aswell is whom we're speaking with, and just impromptu, extemporaneous, and off the cuff if I had a shirt, but there's a teacher that you give credit in Ruston High School who guided you into journalism. And where I'm going with this, Tom, is the importance of you never know what shadow you're casting on a person, and that person can, you're doing something, but you may not get the credit for it at the moment, but you help change the future of an individual because of words that you said.
Well, there's a host of teachers at Ruston High School that were very, very influential on me. Mr. Ryland, mm-hmm. Mr. Peoples, Coach Perkins, all three of my English teachers, Miss Charlotte Lewis, Miss Maggie Hinton, and Miss Mary Alice Garrett, a saint.
Oh, yeah, that's the one I was looking for. Yeah,
a lovely woman, great. Her husband was Coach L.J. Hoss Garrett,
right?
And she was the one that kind of took me under her wing, and I owe so much to her.
Tom Aswell, our guest here on Rix-Mix Community Radio. Let's set a date to talk more, because there's a wealth of information, and if you got the time, things that are just coming to my head as we're winging this. What do you think the mailbox money of a royalty check would be for a Merle Kilgore, guesstimating, so that people have a reference that when the artist whom you mentioned gave away his songs for booze and pills, that could have been mailbox money in the future?
You can live off that. The guy that wrote "I'm Going to Be a Will Someday" is from Baton Rouge, and I was in the course of writing that book. We were at Sunday brunch one day at one of the casinos here in Baton Rouge, and I was talking to my son-in-law's sister about the book, how it was coming, and I noticed this one guy off to the side was really tuned into what I was saying. And after a few minutes after we ended our conversation, he approached me, and he asked me, he said, "Did I understand that you're writing a book about rock and roll?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I don't know if you're interested or not." He said, "But I'm the one that wrote "I'm Going to Be a Will Someday." And that's the only song he ever wrote. He was a dock worker. He worked on a loading dock. And he wrote that song because some guy was mad at his boss one day, and he said, "I'm not going to always be here. I'm going to be a will someday." And he took that one expression and wrote a song out of it and passed it along to Bartholomew, who was the co-writer for a lot of Fats Domino's records.
Right.
And he took half the writing rights, the composition rights for that song, as Bartholomew's practice was at the time, and gave this guy the other half. And he's made a living off that one song, a great living. And the song's been recorded. Well, to give you some perspective, if you record a record yourself,
right,
you collect royalties on the sales of your record only. But if you write that song, everybody that records that song gives you royalties on it.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy from Baton Rouge, Dick Holler, who wrote Abraham, Martin, and John. That song made the top 5 by 4 different artists: Moms Mabley, Harry Belafonte, Dion, and one other. And he collected royalties on every one of those. And
wow.
he's rich,
right,
off that one song.
Right.
So if Tommy Blake, aka Van Givens, had done the wise thing and kept his royalties, he could have died a wealthy man.
Right.
Willie Nelson wrote "Hello Walls," and he tried to sell it to Fair and Young. Tried to sell it to Fair and Young, who was from Shreveport, by the way, for $500. And Fair and Young told him, said, "Willie, don't sell the rights to your songs." He said, "I'll loan you $500 and I'll record the song." He said, "But don't." He said, "Keep your royalties." And he went into the studio, and all the musicians were making fun of the song, "Hello, windows, hello," and making jokes about the song. They thought it was so
"Hello,
corny.
bank door."
Yeah, and they thought it was so corny. And the song was a huge success, and it made Willie Nelson a rich man. And so if you're a budding songwriter, I don't care how hungry you are, keep the rights to your song. Don't give them away. Bobby Bare gave away All American Boy. And it said on the record Bill Parsons recorded it. Actually, Bill Parsons was a friend of Bobby Bare. That is actually Bobby Bare's voice that records All American Boy. But he gave that song away and for a pittance. So keep your royalties.
Tom,
that's all I'm saying.
Sure. Tom Aswell, our guest. One more question. Louisiana Rocks. That is the book, The True Genesis of Rock and Roll. There is no edifice. That was stimulated this phone call to find out, because I knew this gentleman would know if there was a Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. It's virtual. It's awesome. There's going to be a wealth of information, and I see some great content and opportunities for all of us to come together and promote what we have in this great state with music. Matter of fact, Tom, as my mind goes to another question here, I contend that we should have at least 15 to 20 state songs, Alan Toussaint, Yes We Can, being one of them.
Yeah. I think a rock and roll, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Shreveport would be appropriate. I mean, look what came out of Louisiana Hayride.
There you go.
Floyd Kramer with Last Date. He's from Shreveport. Jim Reeves. Just so many people. But when I was researching this book, I looked for Cosmos Matasso's recording studio, the building that he recorded in, and all these old New Orleans hits by Irma Thomas and Alan Toussaint back in the day. I went looking for that recording studio. I found it. And if you go to Memphis and you go to the old Sun Studios, it's a museum now. You can buy T-shirts, you can buy record reproductions, you can buy coffee cups, baseball caps, whatever. It's promoted. You go to this old recording studio in New Orleans, it's a laundromat.
Wow.
And it's got some pictures of some of the singers up over the dryers, but that's it. That's it. And that's a shame. That's an absolute shame that we have not exploited our musical heritage in this state any more than we have. It's just, it's neglect. We could have capitalized on that so much. And we have.
And neglect for sure is one, and just awareness to create, and that's what you're doing with the richness of the state of Louisiana and the music. Staying on that theme, and I'm trying to we'll do this another time. But Lee Dorsey, is that a true story? I think you told me that when you were up here visiting for one of your trips, Tom Aswell, that Lee Dorsey was working cleaning up a after he wrote and sang a song. What was it? The coal mine?
No, you're thinking of Ernie Cato and Mother-in-Law.
Okay, tell us about that one.
Well, Ernie Cato was a janitor. He worked at two places. He worked at a Cadillac dealership, and he worked at Cosmos Matasso Studio cleaning up.
Right.
And who wrote Mother-in-Law? Was it Alan Toussaint? Anyway, he wrote Mother-in-Law. He didn't like it. He threw it in the trash. Ernie was cleaning up. He found the song, and he wanted to record it himself. And he recruited Benny Spellman to do the intro, the Mother-in-Law. And at that time, you could cut a record for $5. Now, try to run a studio today and record a song and see what it'll cost you. It starts at $75,000 and goes up. But back then, it was $5. You could cut an acetate record, and you take it down to your local DJ, and that's what he did. He took it down to a local black DJ and said, "Hey, man, would you play my song?" And he played it, and they responded to it. So he had copies of it and sent it out to black DJs all over the country, and all of a sudden, Mother-in-Law is a huge hit. And so Ernie, of course, as I said, was just a janitor. And one day, now the song was picked up by a recording studio that happened to be right across the street from the Cadillac dealership,
right,
where he worked. And one day, he's in the dealership, and he's wiping down a brand new Cadillac convertible, wiping the smudges off of it. It was on the showroom floor. And he gets behind the wheel, and he's wiping down the dashboard. And then he was just kind of inspired to see what it would feel like to drive a Cadillac. So he sits behind the wheel and grabs the steering wheel and acts like he's driving it. And the owner saw him. And this was 1960. A black man can't do something that audacious. They fired him on the spot. And he goes across the street to the recording studio and goes into the president of the recording studio's office. And he says, "Could you loan me bus fare home?" He said, "I just got fired across the street." And he had never received a royalty check for his song. And the owner says, "Well, Ernie," he said, "I'm not going to loan you bus fare." He said, "But you just got your first royalty check. This ought to cover bus fare." And he gives him a check for $28,000. 1960, $28,000 is roughly equivalent to $300,000 today, easily. And Ernie looked at the check, never said a word, turned around, did a 180, walked across the street, and bought the Cadillac. Great story.
Oh, yeah. You talk about not only a great story, but Ernie was a wheel that day.
Yeah. Yes, he was.
Awesome.
And he rode Mother-in-Law for many, many, many years until his death. And that was his one big song.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to You asked me about Van Gibbons. It was a horrible mistake he made by not keeping his royalties.
Sure. Awesome, Tom. I do appreciate you jumping on board. We'll arrange something in the future, because what I'm learning here on the old dog new trick thing is that when I can send this out to 30 different platforms, and people can, not email us, but literally type in questions, you could see it too. And so we could set aside some time because there's so much more to get into here with Louisiana. And I mean, it's just so, to me, it's compelling.
Absolutely. And Rick, let me add something real quick,
Sure.
kind of on a more somber note.
Okay.
When I was on your show last time, I had you play two songs in particular, and they were played for a friend of mine who used to request those songs when I was a disc jockey.
Okay.
And I didn't tell her that I was going to do that, and I played those. She loved it. She was listening online in Texas. Betsy Gilbert. She recently passed away, and I just wanted to give a shout out to her memory.
Sure enough. What was the song? Because I had Ernie K. Doe all queued up, ready to go.
Teen Angel and My Boyfriend's Back.
All right, so we'll close with Teen Angel. I know that's been covered by.
Neither one of those songs happen to be Louisiana songs, but still, I mean, those were her favorites, and when she was a teeny bopper, and I used to play those songs for her all the time.
One of these times, we're going to break open a cigar and maybe some evening libations and talk about some of those stories at KRUS back in the day with Tom Aswell. No, just kidding.
Positively.
All right, awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much. Here, this is is it Betty? What was her last name again?
Betsy Gilbert.
Betsy Gilbert from Tom Aswell. Rest in power and enjoy. Here's Teen Angel. Well, that was perfect. I lost my music. You poked my heart. Oh, I found it. Gosh, operator error, man. Well, that's part of the learning process. So here we go, Betsy Gilbert. I got it. I had the volume turned down. Teen Angel, Teen Angel.